Good morning, students. Today we are moving on to the third chapter, experience of illness. In this, the first topic is medicalization. Okay, medicalization is a simple concept which I will explain to you. The definition says medicalization describes a process by which non medical problems become defined and treated as medical problems. Okay, it's a simple definition. There are non medical problems which slowly become a medical problem. Okay, which are the non medical problems that have become medical problems? Alcoholism, addiction to video games are all considered to be illness or disorders. Okay, the manner in which non medical problems and social deviant behavior are constructed into a medical problem is called medicalization. So a social problem or a social deviant behavior, in society we are supposed to behave normally, but when we behave a little abnormally, normally a person does not drink, normally a person does not smoke, normally a person does not play video games, or they may play video games but they may not be addicted to video games. So when a person becomes addicted to video games, or a person becomes an alcoholic, or when a person becomes a chronic smoker, then these are all social deviant behaviors. It is a behavior, it is an individual person's behavior. But what happens is the medical industry converts it into a medical problem. This is called as medicalization. Okay, what are the other examples of medicalized disorders? Menopause, alcoholism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, post traumatic stress disorder, anorexia, infertility, and sleep disorders. Okay, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a disorder in children where they become very hyperactive, they become overactive, and because of that they do not have proper attention in school. This is not a disease, it is just a behavior of a child, but slowly what happens is doctors convert it into a medical problem. Same way, after an accident or after a trauma, people have stress. This post traumatic stress disorder is also considered to be a disease these days. Okay, this kind of converting a social or an individual problem into a medical problem is called medicalization. Hope you understood what medicalization exactly means. Okay, now we'll see what it means in sociology. It refers to the increasing number of personal and social problems. Each person has a lot of personal problems, social problems, and because of that they behave abnormally. They are not normal in society, they behave a little abnormal in society. So what happens is they are taken to a psychiatrist or a doctor where they are checked, and that disorder is given a medical name, and then it is converted into a medical problem, and slowly there are medicines that are made for that disorder. And who makes the medicines? Pharmaceutical companies. And what benefit does the pharmaceutical company have? They are able to sell their product. Okay, so this is how a social issue becomes a medical problem. So next, why does this happen? It is a form of social control. That is why over the generations this kind of medicalization has happened. For example, if a person drinks too much, what will happen? The family members will tell the person not to drink, the community will tell the person not to drink. But will this person stop drinking? No. When the family tells the person to stop drinking, he will not stop. But if a medical professional tells the person that it is a disease and it has to be treated, and they give medicines and they have a de-addiction program, then the person becomes scared, thinking that if he continues drinking then he will die, because it's a disease. And that is how the person stops drinking, and alcoholism, which is a social issue, becomes a medical problem. And this is a form of social control. So social control is done by authority. and individual within the family, there may not be people who have authority to stop the person drinking, but a medical professional has the authority to make the person stop drinking. So this is medicalization. So is medicalization wrong? You can never say medicalization is a wrong thing, because there are several benefits of medicalization. When a person continues to drink, it causes health problems. The person may ultimately die. Same way, when a person smokes too much, he may get lung cancer. Same way, when a child is addicted to video games, continuously playing video games from morning till evening, then they may have eye problem, musculoskeletal problems. All these problems will come, and the child will also have attention deficit and other activities. So when this social issue is converted into a medical problem, then the social control helps to prevent the person from involving in such activities. So medicalization, in some way, it is good, but at the same time, most of the medicalization is done to the extreme levels. It is converted into a disease or a disorder, so much that the person who is involving is scared and he goes to the doctor. So over a period of time, medicalization converts the social disorder into a serious problem. So that is the bad aspects or negative aspects of medicalization. Okay, so we'll see some examples. Generally, video game addiction. Okay, what are the types of video games that children like? Most of them like violent video games, where there is violence, there is death, there is shooting, killing, that kind of video games. Fighting is there. So when a child continuously plays such violent video games, the child itself may sometimes get that violent tendencies. That is the idea that most people have. Okay, so this is why parents and people around the child who is playing too much of video games tell the child to stop playing such violent video games. But there is very little proof that such behavior is unhealthy. But at the same time, it may cause the child to lose a lot of time, lot of energy, which can otherwise be used in constructive things like studying, like playing outdoor games. All that is prevented, and the child is involved only in sitting in front of the computer or the cell phone. That is a negative aspect. But very rarely does a child who is addicted to violent video games involve in criminal activities. But there are studies which have been done. One study of 3034 students in Singapore found that people who played violent video games had higher levels of aggression and violent tendencies than those who played for shorter periods of time. Okay, but these studies sometimes can be biased. We don't know how they did the study. What will happen is, it will add fuel to the fire of moral panic. That means parents who are already scared that their children are playing too much of violent video games will be more scared because of these studies, and they will prevent the child from playing. This may be detrimental. It may actually cause more aggression in the child when you prevent the child from involving in an activity. The next example is bodybuilding and bigorexia. Okay, bodybuilding and bigorexia is the obsession to show their body to be big and having lot of muscles. So this culture is prevalent mainly in the young boys. They want to show that they have a strong body, they have muscles, and what happens, they eat food which is extremely full of protein, which is helpful in building a muscular body. Okay, instead of playing cricket, football or other games, they are mostly involved in weightlifting and making their body to be muscular. So what happens is, a lot of these people who do this bodybuilding, they also take steroids so that the muscle will become bigger, bulkier. This is a wrong way of building bodybuilding. So slowly, over a period of time, this became a medical problem. Initially, bodybuilding was a normal activity. Slowly, it became a medical problem, and medical professionals started telling that use of steroids is wrong and it can lead to depression, and a lot of the people who used steroids showed long term complications. And though the bodybuilding helps to build the self esteem of a person or a self image of a person, it has negative aspects, and that is why bodybuilding became a medicalization. Through medicalization it became a medical problem. Okay, the opposite of it is women who want to be lean. You know, a lot of women want to show themselves to be very lean, that is, they are fit. So what happens? Women stop eating food because they see in TV that the film stars, actresses, they are all very lean. So they also want to show their body to be like that. So they stop eating. So that is also a social problem, because they are having peer pressure. That is, the surrounding people in the community, they behave like that, others also start behaving. Slowly that has become a medical problem. So when people start losing weight and they become very lean, then there are other medical issues which occur, and so the doctors get involved and they tell the people who are dieting to have a lean body about the medical issues. So an individual's choice of behavior has become a medical problem. This is another example of medicalization. Okay, so there are so many social issues and individual behavior that have become medical problems, and that is called medicalization. Okay, what I want you to do is, I am giving you an assignment. Explain the impact of medicalization on alcoholism, infertility and obesity. I have not given these examples when I talk to you about medicalization. Okay, so based on what I took in this class today, you have to write the impact of medicalization of alcoholism, infertility and obesity. Obesity means a person who is extremely overweight. Infertility means somebody who is not able to have children. You see a lot of obesity clinics. You see on TV advertisements saying they give treatment to make you less heavy. Same way infertility, children, parents, married couples who don't have children, now there are a lot of doctors who promote that they'll give treatment for infertility. So these are all medicalization of social issues and individual problems. So you have to write what is the impact of medicalization of this, how in the alcoholism, infertility or obesity medicalization has happened. You can just do a one-page write-up, either typed or written. It's a simple thing, so you can even write, take a photo and send it to me. That's your assignment for medicalization. So we'll go to the next topic, which is illness behavior. Okay, so what is illness behavior? It's another simple concept. We already saw medicalization. So illness behavior is when a person is ill or sick, how do they behave? Okay, do they behave normally or do they behave abnormally? And if they behave abnormally, what are the abnormal behaviors? Okay, so the definition of illness behavior is, it describes the ways in which people respond to bodily indications and conditions which they come to view as abnormal. So when you have an abnormal symptom in your body, which is an illness, how do you behave? Okay, so the whole illness behavior revolves around the symptoms of the person when they become sick. Okay, so each person behaves differently. Even in your own house, you would see that when your father becomes sick, he shows himself to be usually a strong person, that he doesn't bother about the sickness. Whereas if you have a younger sister who becomes sick, then younger children in the family, they act as if they are more sick. They lie down in one place, they want all the attention of the parents. So these kind of behavior, each person behaves differently. That is called as illness behavior. And one example is denial of chest pain as heart attack. A lot of people have pain in the chest as they grow older. Some of them Immediately they rush to the doctor saying that they have chest pain, and they are tested. Sometimes they are tested to have heart problem, sometimes it is just gastritis, or sometimes it is some other problem. Okay, whereas some people, when they have chest pain, they do not go to the doctor. They don't consider that they will become sick, especially strong people who think that they can never become sick, and they deny that they have chest pain. So there are both benefits and disadvantages of this denial. When you are seriously ill, when you really have a heart attack, when you deny that you have heart attack, that means you are not stressed, your mind is strong, so it is easier for you to come out of the sickness. But the disadvantage is, when you deny that you have a heart attack, you will not go to the doctor on time, and that delay can make you die. Okay, on the other hand, when a person rushes to the doctor even for a minor problem, what happens is, when they have a chest pain, they become so stressed that the stress itself increases the seriousness of the heart attack. Okay, so that is the opposite behavior, where opposite of denial. Okay, so each of these behaviors, either denial or rushing to the doctor, can have their own benefits and disadvantages. Okay, next we'll come to the types of illness behavior. Illness behavior can be divided into two major types. Okay, one is self care behavior. Self care behavior means any person who is sick, they try to take their own medicines. For example, when you had cold, when you had fever, what did you do? You took a metacin. When you had cold, you took azithromycin or some antibiotic, or you went to the pharmacy, asked for some medicines and took the medicines. So you took care of your own problems. When you fell down, had an injury when you were small, what did you do? You put bandage in your own house. So for minor injuries, minor problems, you take care of your own health. That is called self-care behavior. That is one aspect of illness behavior. Whereas in some communities, even for minor things, they rush the child to the doctor. Okay, the next type of illness behavior is healthcare utilization behavior. We already know that in some countries, they are having benefits like health insurance, and even in organizations. For example, in CMC hospital, for example, the staff are given healthcare which is free. So when such healthcare is provided, what happens is, even for minor illnesses, the people rush to the hospital and they want the best treatment possible. They do not take self-care. Instead, they go to the doctor because it is free for them, because they feel that it is their right to seek such health care. Okay, so I hope you understood the difference. Self-care means you take care of yourself. Healthcare utilization behavior, because your healthcare system provides you free treatment or insurance is available, you rush to the doctor and get the treatment. Okay, there are also other types of illness behavior, and some abnormal illness behaviors are called as dysnosognosia. Okay, remember this name in case it is asked in the exam. You know that it is abnormal illness behavior. So what are the abnormal illness behavior? We already saw about denial. Denial is common. Most of the people, especially when they suffer from diseases that cause stigma, like leprosy, HIV, AIDS, coronavirus, when they suffer from such diseases, what do they say? They say that they do not have the disease. They don't want to accept that they are suffering from the disease because of the stigma attached. This is mainly called as denial. Okay, this is an abnormal illness behavior. When they are suffering from a disease, they deny that they have the disease. They tell that I don't have the disease. The next type of abnormal behavior is anxiety and depression. Okay, so some people feel very anxious and they are depressed when they get disease. For example, if a person suffers from cancer, if a doctor diagnoses a patient to have cancer, then the patient will have a lot of anxiety and the depression. Some of the patients are so depressed that they even try to commit suicide. So that is another type of abnormal illness behavior. Then the next type is hypochondriasis. Okay, here the person may have very mild symptoms, or they may not have even have symptoms. Okay, but because they see that in the community others are suffering from a particular disease, they feel that they are also suffering from the disease. For example, some of you may have cold right now. You may have a normal cold which we have had all these years, but because the coronavirus pandemic is all over the world, you may have a fear inside thinking, what if I have coronavirus? Will I have coronavirus? I think I have coronavirus. Such kind of thoughts, even though you are not having the disease, because of some symptoms which are similar to a particular disease which is very serious, you think you are also suffering from the same disease. That is called hypochondriasis. These are all different types of illness behavior. Okay, so next we'll see what are the causes of illness behavior. There are different causes: social causes, cultural causes, psychological causes, physiological causes, and structural causes. Social causes means based on the society. For example, some of the people may show that they have a disease so that they get free treatment. That's a social cause. Cultural cause, for example, in a culture, if a person gets a particular disease, then they are considered to be different from other people. For example, cultural diseases are there. We already talked about folk diseases in the previous chapter, where particular groups of people think that they have got certain diseases and they behave differently. Okay, that is called cultural diseases. And psychological disease, when a person does not have a particular disease, just to get the attention of the family members or the community, they behave as if they have a particular disease. That is psychological. So like that, physiological and structural causes are there. One of the reasons is social class. So if you are from a high social class, then even mild symptoms are taken very seriously. Okay, and you seek treatment. That is one type of illness behavior based on social class. And the other way, opposite of it, there are working class people who have to go do their work every day, and they have very little money, so their concentration is more on the work. Unless they are very very seriously ill, then only they go to the doctor. So the social class plays a role in illness behavior. Same way, education. If you are highly educated, then you think that each symptom that you have, suppose you have a small patch, then you immediately rush to the doctor thinking it is leprosy. Whereas a person who is uneducated may not even know anything about leprosy, so they do not go to the doctor. Same way, religion and social class, they all play a role in illness behavior. So these are the various factors which play a role in the behavior of the person. Okay, next we come to some important applied aspects. Applied aspects mean how, as a medical sociologist, you can play a role in the illness behavior. Illness behavior in seeking treatment. How does this behavior, illness behavior, cause differences in people to seek treatment? A symptom iceberg exists. Iceberg, you know what an iceberg is? When you put an ice inside the water, only 1/3 of it is seen outside, 2/3 of it is under the water. So same way, all the people who have diseases are divided into 3 groups. 1/3 of the people will not do anything to treat their disease. Even if they have a disease, they do not go to the doctor, they do not treat themselves. So they don't do anything. 1/3 of the people take their own medicines, or they seek alternative therapies. So self-medication. And only 1/3 of the people, when they are sick, they go to the doctor and consult the doctor. So you know that this is the tip of the iceberg. Only 1/3 of the people. If there are 1,000 people in the community with coronavirus, then probably only 300 people actually go to the doctor and take treatment. Same way in leprosy. If there are 1,000 people with leprosy, very few people come on their own to the doctor. Others live in their own community. Some of them take their own treatments, and some of them do not take any treatment. So this is the illness behavior in seeking treatment. Some of your research projects in your final year, you can base on this. Which groups of people, based on their stigmatizing diseases, do they go to seek treatment, or do they avoid treatment? So that is one topic that you can do. The next thing is illness behavior and what makes people seek treatment. So we already saw only one third go and get treatment. So in this one third group people, why do they go and get treatment? The first thing is the frequency with which the illness occurs in the population. That is a commonality of the disease. If a disease is very common, for example, if you have a common cold, if you feel headache, for example, immediately when you have headache, you don't go to the doctor because it's frequent. Everybody in the family gets headache at least once a month. So that is a frequent disease. So frequent diseases, we do not go to the doctor. Similarly, the second point is familiarity of the symptoms. If some symptoms like headache, back pain, neck pain, these are all common problems. Everybody who are old in your family will have knee pain, they'll have neck pain. So these symptoms are repeatedly occurring in the community. So people do not go for taking treatment for these symptoms. Then the predictability of the outcome of illness. So you know when you get a common cold, there is a proverb or some saying which says if you treat a cold, it gets better in 7 days. If you do not treat a cold, it gets better in 1 week. That means whether you treat a cold or not treat a cold, it takes 7 days. Okay, 1 week is 7 days. So the outcome of the illness you already know, it will take 7 days for it to become okay. So the predictability of the outcome of the disease also makes a impact on whether a person goes to seek treatment. Finally, the amount of threat and loss that is likely to result from the illness. So this is the serious issue. So if a particular disease is likely to cause death or serious problem, then those kind of people go and seek treatment immediately. So these are the 4 important aspects which play a role in deciding whether a person goes to the doctor to seek treatment or they do self-medication or they do alternative therapies or they ignore the disease. Okay, hope you understood this topic about illness behavior. So let us come to this assignment. How will you influence patient with leprosy in denial to take treatment? You know, in leprosy there are a lot of people who deny that they have the disease. They may feel, even if the doctor tells them you have leprosy, they think that they don't suffer from leprosy, they do not take treatment or they stop treatment halfway. Okay, so as a medical sociologist, you have to convince the patient to take proper treatment. So how will you convince a person to take proper treatment if they are suffering from leprosy? Okay, if you are not interested in leprosy, you can choose any other disease. You can choose coronavirus, you can choose cancer, you can choose tuberculosis, you can choose HIV. There are so many diseases where people are likely to deny because it's a psychological issue. They deny that they have that disease. Okay, so just make a 1-page written document on how you will influence the patient who is in denial to take treatment. You have to come up with creative ways in which you will convince the patient. Okay, don't keep writing the same old things that you will counsel the patient, you will talk to the patient. Have some creative ways that will show how much you are involved in with the patient. Okay, so find out some creative ways in which you will overcome the denial in the patient. Okay, thank you. So these are the 2 topics that we have covered today. Next class we'll cover things like stigma and other things in the 3rd chapter.